that's another story about TSM. Now, I have no doubt the Horseman will probably get summoned at some point, but I want to follow up on this because it was my original reporting, and there's some very interesting aspects to it. I suspected at the time, but can now talk about. TSM released their findings of their investigation. Back in March, I did a story everybody wanted to know in League of Legends because I am still your boy. You just can't read about it on Reddit. Everyone was like, why is TSM fired their coach? Why did you fire my teacher? Turns out they made the claim at the time that there was some conflict of interest, our old friend. I was like, listen, I'll go look into this. And I was able to run down some old sources from back in the day when I used to do League of Legends reporting. I was able to track down Mr. Peter Zhang, the fired coach himself, and interview him extensively. I was then able to cross-check details of that interview with sources, with news sources. I also spoke to several people within the infrastructure of League of Legends about potential investigations. And in the end, was able to cobble together pretty cohesive story. Now, unfortunately, within that story, there were aspects to it we couldn't quite get over the line because where my source network really starts to run into trouble is when we start getting into the world of Chinese banking. Which, listen, I can only do so much. I'm clearly gunning for Journalist of the Year, but I just haven't been able to break into the Chinese financial sector yet. I want to. I really do. Anyway, this was the result of the day after I think my report went out, which confirmed a few things. And just so you know, he admitted that he had sold a car or agreed to sell a car for Sword Art and then sold the car and kept over half of the money and didn't pay it to him. And so Sword Art, who was already a really weird, like, what, you know, kind of like overpriced signing, TSM raised a lot of eyebrows. He basically had said, look, if you don't give me my money back soon, I'm going to go public. So then Mr. Zhang started to run around and had to borrow money. Now, here's the problem. Because Sword Art was getting the bag off TSM, because TSM massively overpaid for talent that wasn't all that good in the grand scheme of things, it was an $80,000 car. So pocketing half of it is kind of fucking crazy. You know, over half, yeah. You've just kept $45,000 or whatever. So, so anyway, he admitted to that. He admitted to that. That's what's wild. I couldn't believe it. I did the interview and I said, oh, and it's been alleged that you owe Sword Art money because you pocketed money from the sale of a car. And he went, yeah. It is a rare day in esports that people are just sort of upfront in that manner, you know? Fucking crazy. Like, I was like, I didn't know what to do next. I was like pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, this is going to be easy to slam dunk this one. You know, we talked for a long, long time. I was like, thanks, bro. You have... Yeah, this makes the report very easy to put out there. But what he did deny was that he was running some sort of scam, for want of a better word, where he had only took certain players into the TSM squad so he could take portions of their money and keep them for himself. He said, no, that's not what's going on. Yes, I am taking their money, but it's so I can send it back to China on their behalf, or change it into dollars so they have money here because I'm an American green card holder and I have an American bank account. And I went, sounds like there's still something a bit weird going on there. And he said, no, this is normal among Chinese professional esports people. I've always changed money for them. It's just something they do. We do. It seems to be an American cultural misunderstanding. Well, we all know about those American cultural misunderstandings. I'm sympathetic. I'll listen to your story. And so we got into it. I was looking at financial records. trying to figure out if it all married up. But the long and the short was I wasn't able to get into the Chinese banking system and trace exactly who was getting what money and how much and when. And then, obviously, the story came out. He did a twit longer and went back to China, and TSM said, we're hiring a law firm to do an independent investigation. Just wait for the results of that. And I thought, well, I did my bit. It's all blown up on the League of Legends subreddit again. All the old mods having to explain why my content is banned in 2022, because they are deranged, two of them especially. And they're deleting comments of people saying Richard Lewis wrote the original, and then they pretend they don't. And it's just funny because I know it causes them immense problems every time a story doesn't get posted on the subreddit. I know people bother them about it, and it's like, yep, that is just a fraction of the shit I get on a daily basis that you actively encourage. And now, by the way, that Kahootie, the head mod, has decided he's an NIP fan. He comes into the CSGO subreddit. Let me tell you about Richard Lewis. Bro, write another fucking manifesto about moderation. Perfectly normal, healthy way to spend your time, homie. So yeah, this isn't going to be on the subreddit. But it doesn't matter, because the TSM guys, the TSM fan base, this is a sidebar, but the TSM fan base have decided now, Richard Lewis is okay, actually. They're so pissed off with the way their org is being run and the way Reginald has conducted himself and these investigations. They're like, if Richard Lewis says it, it's legit. I've lived long enough to win over TSM. And as of today, even some Brazilian CS fans. Maybe I'm going to end up the most popular man in esports. No, that would be James Banks, wouldn't it? So, anyway, let's get into this story, because they released their findings. And me being me, I was like, shouldn't that report have come back a little bit? Yeah. Got in touch with their PR people, and they were like, it's funny you should ask. We've got investigations coming back tomorrow. Here, if you sign a embargo, you can have a look. I went, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll check that shit out. And man alive, it sort of corroborates all of my reporting in the first place, and a little bit more, and answers some of the questions. When you're doing a story, it's like kind of being a detective. You get all these pieces, and you're like, why did he say that? And whose money is that? And what's that got to do with this? And you try and piece it together. And then, unfortunately, the connective tissue is typically speculation. And you can't write up speculation in reportage. Now, in this investigation that they did, there's speculation. But I can report their speculation. Fantastic. So everyone's a winner. Anyway, here's what their reportings found. And remember, this was the law firm Simpson, Thatcher, and Bartlett LLP. So these were the principal findings. Mr. Zhang diverted a total of approximately $250,000 in salary payments from 2 TSM players to himself and third parties. Mr. Zhang agreed to sell a car on behalf of a player who was leaving the US to return to Asia. That car was sold for $80,000, but the player never received the proceeds from the sale. Only after the player threatened to report Mr. Zhang to authorities did he receive a portion of the funds, roughly $35,000. To date, the $45,000 balance remains unpaid. And also, Mr. Zhang attempted to borrow money from 8 TSM players and staff members, including players over whom he had managerial responsibility. He claimed these funds were needed to pay for, among other things, his grandmother's medical treatment in China. There's always a sick nan, isn't there, somewhere? Mr. Zhang attempted to solicit amounts between $1,500 to approximately $22,000 per player. 2 players lent Mr. Zhang a total of approximately $15,000, of which Mr. Zhang has since repaid approximately $10,500. The company became aware of Mr. Zhang's solicitation for loans on or around March 18, 2022, and took immediate action to stop more money from being lent to Mr. Zhang, including reversing several scheduled wire transfers. The company's prompt response prevented approximately $54,000 from being sent. To date, approximately $4,500 remains unreturned by Mr. Zhang. Now, I reported pretty much all of that. The specifics of the numbers make it all a lot more clearer. And as I said, Double Lift had his bizarre stream where he read my initial story, said, "Who is Richard Lewis?" despite the fact I've met him, talked to him, and interviewed him, which was weird. Called me a Deserto writer, then said, "Oh yeah, he also asked me for money, but I said no." Then when Peter Zhang put out his twit longer, Double Lifted another stream saying, "Yo, Richard Lewis could probably get sued for what he said." And it's like, listen, Double Lift's thoughts on journalism are, sort of like a dog's thoughts on astrophysics, aren't they? They just don't really matter, nor would I ever solicit them. But the important part of that anecdote is that he did corroborate that, Peter Zhang was indeed going out and asking for money, which was part of the story he then later said I could be sued for being inaccurate. It's a confusing world. It's a confusing world we live in. Anyway, this is where it gets interesting, because there are some specifics about the story that, like, oh wow, this is like actually totally lines up and it all makes sense now. And remember, these are all TSM's allegations, or rather, the law firm they hired to do the investigations, allegations. Make of that what you will. Maybe there's a layer of abstraction there that makes it so actually it's a bit more plausible. Entirely up to you whether or not you believe them. As I said, these are the allegations, and there is some speculation within them. Speculation that makes absolute sense, but speculation nonetheless. In addition to this, it was the conclusion of the law firm that Zhang was not acting in the best interests of the organization, which is fucking understatement of the year. This motherfucker was a sleeper agent plus. Like, this guy was like, I'm just going to hire terrible players because I happen to know them, and maybe I'll get some money off them. And listen, by the way, as I'll get to right at the end, TSM management, how have you not even thought this through to, like, maybe spot this? Whatever. It's esports. Forget about it, Jake. Their report stated that we observed evidence indicating other irregularities in connection with Mr. Zhang's role in recruiting players from China. In particular, certain recommendations Mr. Zhang made to TSM may have been motivated by personal gain, including in connection with the salary diversion scheme discussed above, rather than recruiting the best players for the team. Now, as I go on to explain, at the centre of it all was a working relationship between Zhang and the former head coach of a team called Victory 5, who is Wang Hanyi Hanyu. Now, Hanyu is now a talent agent in China and represented two of the players that were acquired by TSM, and it is then claimed that Zhang, as a proxy, would say to the players that Han Yi represented, well, I can get you on TSM. He was mates with Han Yi, and so Han Yi would go to the players, listen, through Peter Zhang, I can get you on TSM. All we're going to need to make the wildest transfer move of your dreams happen is we get a little bit of the scratch back, right? And so they had this alleged relationship, and they said in their findings that the payments that were being kicked back were being distributed into 17 bank accounts, one of which was Zhang's and the other of which belonged to Mr. Han Yu. So 17. So yes, now is an appropriate time to spam banks in the chat. 17 of them, to be fucking specifically. 17 bank accounts. What the fuck's going on there? Bit weird. Anyway, as a result of this, the report reads, the vast majority, that's key, the vast majority of the players' salary payments between December 2021 and February 2022, including large upfront payments made by TSM as a signing bonus to the players, were diverted to bank accounts not affiliated with the players, of which one was owned by Mr. Zhang and another was owned by Wang Hanyi Hanyu. While we do not know the relationship between the owners of the remaining bank accounts and Mr. Zhang and or Hanyi, it continues, certain evidence suggests all of the diverted funds were eventually received by Mr. Zhang. By Mr. Zhang, Hanyi, Hanyi's talent agency company, and other individuals affiliated therewith. So, across those 17 bank accounts, the majority of the money over those 3 month period, including the signing on bonuses, just ended up to certain people affiliated with the talent agency in one way or another. That's their claim. That's what TSM say. Oh, and I'll just finish this little quote. Hanyi has taken the position that his agency was entitled to all of these funds in whole or in part as commission under separate agreements with the players, of which he refused to provide a copy. It was all in the contract. Can I see the contract? You cannot see the contract. So look, I've seen a lot of schemes and scams and shit down the years in esports, and there's potentially two things at play here just based on the surface of the evidence. One is that it is part of a convoluted sort of a pay-to-play scheme. I know somebody who this is quite common in football, soccer, to the American Zoomers that watch my show. In fact, this thing of like taking a bung is what they called it in the Premier League for a long period of time. Basically how it would work, a football manager would know an agent that they were friends with. The agent says, I will push my client, my player, towards your team. I will recommend it, even though it's not in the best interest of my client. You will give me money for that, and we'll all get rich and we'll do this together. This was a thing throughout the whole Premier League era. Alex Ferguson's kid, I believe, was accused of agent irregularities and preferential treatment in a BBC investigation, and that's why Alex Ferguson for years refused to talk to the BBC, and even though that was a violation of the FA's media agreements and media rights, they let him do it anyway, and that's why you had to put up with sour-faced Brian Kidd doing post-match interviews after Man United won or lost. On top of that, there was a number of agents associated with, fucking Sam Allardyce, Harry Redknapp, King of the Bungs, So that it was a whole thing, and it was going on for years. The Tevez and Mascherano thing was something completely even worse. That was like the next phase, the next evolution. That was individual companies owning rights to players and being able to sell them as if they were like cattle to teams. that was way worse for the evolution of the game. That was what they call third party ownership. Anyway, so this is not uncommon in sports. Representation agents do backroom deals with managers to push players to teams that might not be in the best interests in exchange for money. This mirrors that, and it could be that it's inappropriate. I don't know if it breaks any laws. I don't know if it breaks any rules. I don't know if Riot or anyone would even think about it. But it's certainly room for dismissal if the owners don't approve of the coach doing it and don't know the coach is doing it. You could certainly fire someone over it. And again, not a lawyer, but pretty sure that would hold up. The other thing it could be is maybe it is all above board. Maybe Peter Zhang did want the players. Maybe he did believe the players were the best players for TSM. Maybe TSM agreed with him, and maybe the talent agent agreed with him. And then what they said was, because you are going to make more money off these deals than you can possibly imagine to the players, you should probably think about saving this money. Why don't we put it in some offshore bank accounts for you? I can do it. You'll get preferential tax treatment. We won't tell anyone about it, and, it'll go through us, so there won't be a paper trail for you. So it could be a form of, like, offshoring, if that's a term. It could be something along those lines. So it's one or the other. I mean, it looks irregular to me. This isn't standard operating procedure. Standard operating procedure is an agent comes along, says, hey, I represent this player. You're looking for a player who plays in the role that my player does. Would you like to get said player? Org goes, yes, I would like to get said player. What do we need to do to make that happen? Well, my player will only possibly play for X amount, and we need a signing on bonus, and they'll have to relocate. Here is my suggestion. Here is my counter offer. And a deal is made, and the magic happens. That's typical operating procedure for players with representation. This is not that. So, whatever's gone on, it ain't right. Next up, finally, the investigators also stated they had strong suspicions that Zhang leaked information from TSM to Han Yu in order to facilitate Han Yu's business. Mr. Zhang may have provided Han Yi with non-public information regarding TSM's recruiting decisions in order to benefit Han Yi and or himself. Typically, an esports player hires a talent... Oh, here you go. They're about to explain. I forgot I wrote this up. Maybe that's why it's in my brain. Anyway, an esports player hires a talent agent, and then the agent tries to secure employment for that player. But with respect to at least one TSM player, Han Yi was able to obtain a draft agreement TSM prepared for the player before TSM reached out to the player, and then he used the draft agreement to secure an agency agreement with that player, pursuant to which he received 20% of the player's salary. So in other words, right, TSM were supposedly looking into a player, and then apropos of seemingly nothing, Han Yi, the talent agent, decided to lock that player in to a contract where he would get 20%. How would he know? I guess he was just well informed. So it is speculation. You know what I say about speculation, but it's their speculation. It's not my speculation. So I'm happy to talk about it. They say, while we do not have conclusive evidence on this issue, Mr. Zhang's involvement in the TSM recruiting process, his close relationship with Han Yi, and the fact that Mr. Zhang since acted as an intermediary for the player's commission payments to Han Yi, suggests Mr. Zhang may have shared the draft TSM agreement and other related non-public information with Han Yi, potentially in exchange for personal benefit. So, whatever you believe about, the extent of the unethical behaviour, I think we can agree Peter Zhang wasn't really out there doing his best for TSM. I think that is a reasonable assumption at this point. I think we can all agree with that. And then it concludes with it's just fantastic. While Zhang had maintained his position that he was simply someone trying to fulfill a difficult transaction for professional players leaving China to compete in the United States, and that the players would speak positively on his behalf, it certainly seems on the surface, this is me doing my little Columbo, there's just one thing, Mr. Zhang. Wife's a big fan. There were a number of concerning business irregularities that were not caught early enough to prevent it impacting the players and the TSM organisation itself. The statement from TSM also says they have acted to provide resources and support for the affected players. Now, I've got to say this, and this is probably a part where TSM are like, damn you, Richard, we thought you were on our side. I'm on no one's side. I'm like Vic Mackey before the money train. I'm not for sale. Later on he was for sale. But for now, I'm season 1, season 2 Vic Mackey. Money train fucked everything. Anyway, the point is, TSM had to, they had to have caught this. Like, he's running around, he's handling your recruitment in a region specifically you want to recruit from, in a region where he has ties. He's recommending players. Draft agreements are seemingly being leaked. A player you've targeted gets suddenly snapped up by a talent agent. And now, suddenly, things are more difficult. What could be happening? Like, how can you not see that? And so, managerial incompetence, once again, absolutely rears its head at TSM. There's no two ways about that. You gave this guy autonomy, you gave this guy authority, and all the while, you're getting wrecked on the deals, and you can't figure out where the problem is. Like, come on, man. Come on. There had to be someone that could fucking figure out what was going on. Oh, I guess not. No big deal. So, I mean, listen, if this doesn't prompt some sort of restructuring, like basically whoever's job it was to keep their eye on that part of the business has fucked up massively. Yes, Peter Zhang has done some fucking fucked up shit, no doubt. But who was enabling him? Why did he have this? What's going on? Crazy shit. Then, just to put, right, because this is a delicious cake of a story. Let's put a cherry on it. Maybe 2. Maybe you like those cherries. Zhang himself did not cooperate with the investigation. Between April 21st and the time of this report, the investigators made multiple attempts via emails and phone calls to invite Mr. Zhang to an interview. TSM's public statement claims the attempts were unsuccessful, as Mr. Zhang claims that his internet and phone line were both unreliable. Mr. Zhang indicated he may be open to an interview in the future, subject to, among other things, consultation with his legal counsel. However, the investigators got the impression Mr. Zhang was giving them the runaround. How could you possibly believe that? And then it says right at the end, a spokesperson for the organisation also confirmed the matter has been referred to the FBI for investigation. And that, my friends, is esports in a nutshell. Now, I'll add this. There is absolutely, I believe, close to zero chance that there's going to be any response from the FBI because, like, he's in China. There might be some jurisdictional issues, I believe, but still, they've referred it to them. I mean, we'll see if they'll have a look at it. My experience from also referring things to law enforcement is they sort of don't really give it much of a fuck unless they can roll it up to organised crime and ties in, particularly in America, because, you know, it's the FBI. So, yeah, wild shit. And it looks to be another just sort of leaf in the book of TSM incompetency. There was another report released today, but I'm going to save all my thoughts for maybe a Horseman episode or something. But just so you know, they dropped this on the same day they dropped the report that TSM conducted into Reginald's alleged bullying. To which he fucked up the messaging and said just crazy shit. Like he said, first of all, here's the results of the TSM investigation. No. Concentrate on how it's not a TSM investigation and you hired like independent people. Next up, they were like, we did nothing lawfully wrong. No, don't lead with that. No one thought lawfully wrong was on the table. Now you're saying it is? What's going on? So they absolutely, massively fucked up the messaging around even the wins. Even a W at TSM, you go, pull that off, stretch that out. It's an L. It was an L the whole time. That's, once again, I'm just explaining it for the Zoomers. How you turn a W, and you take the W, you see, and you go, and then you turn it on it, you see? That's letters for you.